Plot summary of The Baron in the Trees by Italo Calvino. The day is June 15, 1767. In the Italian village of Ombrosa, the di Ronde family, Baron Arminio, his illegitimate brother the Cavalier Avocado, and his wife the Generalessa, their children Battista, Biagio, and Cosimo, and the boy's tutor, Abbé Fauchelefleur, sit down to lunch, where Cosimo refuses to eat his snails. When Cosimo turned 12, he and Biagio, who was 8 years old, started eating at the adults' table. This put an end to a time when they got into trouble during meals. Cosimo has been fighting against his parents ever since. Cosimo knows that not eating the snails is a very bad thing, so he gets up from the table and climbs a tree. He says he'll never come down and then climbs into the garden next door, which is owned by the Donderiva family, who are rivals of Baron Arminio. Cosimo finds a beautiful young girl swinging in the garden of the Donderivas. Cosimo is teased by a girl named Viola, but they talk about how to play a game in which Cosimo can't come down from the trees. When Viola's aunt shows up and offers Cosimo some hot chocolate, Cosimo is too proud to accept and climbs away. Back in his own garden, Cosimo tells Biagio that he isn't going to come down. Biagio is upset by this, but he does what Cosimo asks and brings him a blanket and some other things. The next morning, Cosimo gets up and goes looking for a group of local boys who steal farmers' fruit. They make fun of Cosimo's wealth and talk about a girl they call the Sinferosa. The farmers hear their laughter and find them, but Cosimo leads them to safety through the trees. Cosimo finds out that the Sinferosa is actually Viola and that she used to protect the fruit thieves until she betrayed them and got them caught. Cosimo, on the other hand, is trying very hard to impress Viola. When he and the other thieves hear her hunting horn, the boys on the ground and Cosimo up in the trees, they all run to her. Cosimo says out loud that he hasn't left the trees, so the kids start playing chase. When the fruit thieves leave the game, Viola seems to lose interest, and Cosimo thinks she started the game to make all the boys mad. Around this time, the Generalessa starts to watch Cosimo through a field telescope. She is the first member of his family to realize that he's not coming down. Cosimo spends his first few days exploring the tops of the trees. Baron Arminio sends the Cavalier Avocado to the garden of the Donderivas to catch Cosimo after a while. This doesn't work, which makes Cosimo want to try even harder to impress Viola. Cosimo goes deep into the woods to do this. There, he comes across a dangerous wild cat and kills it. He brings the cat back to show Viola, but as she gets into a carriage to go to school, she isn't very interested. Cosimo's heart is broken, but he turns the cat's fur into a hat. Baron Arminio spends his time worrying that his claim to the local dukedom is gone because his heir lives in the trees. Biagio says that Baron Arminio's worry is silly because he will never get the duchy. Baron Arminio finds Cosimo one day, and the two of them talk about what could happen because of Cosimo's rebellion. The next day, Cosimo goes back to learning from the Abbé Fauchelefleur, but this time he does it from the trees. From now on, things are normal for Cosimo and his family, except for where Cosimo chooses to live. Baron Arminio tries to hide the fact that Cosimo is rebelling, but the Count d'Estimac shows up and finds out. The Count thinks Cosimo is charming and says he will talk about Cosimo in all of Europe's royal courts. In a surprising turn of events, the young Count d'Estimac gets engaged to Battista. Cosimo will soon be able to live and work in the trees, but he needs a dog to help him hunt. One day, he sees a puppy dachshund following a pack of hounds. When the hunters say the dachshund isn't theirs, Cosimo adopts the puppy, names him Ottimo Massimo, and tells it to raise a fox. He finds out that the puppy belongs to Viola, so he carves his name, Viola's name, and Ottimo Massimo's name into a tree in Viola's garden. For the rest of his teenage years, Cosimo pretty much does whatever he wants. Cosimo gets to know the Cavalier Avocado, and when he finds out that his uncle keeps bees in a way that Baron Arminio won't notice, he starts to like and trust him again. The Cavalier Avocado talks to Cosimo about aqueduct systems from time to time, but their talks don't lead to anything in the real world. Most of the time, Cosimo looks at his uncle as an example of what not to be, a loner. John de Brugge is said to be on the run, but as Cosimo listens to traveling charcoal burners, he starts to think that the bandit isn't someone to be afraid of. So, when the thief runs under Cosimo's tree to get away from the police one day, Cosimo helps de Brugge catch him. He finds out that de Brugge loves to read novels, so he starts bringing him books. This makes Cosimo want to read and learn for the rest of his life. But this is what killed de Brugge. His love of books made him a bad thief, and the police caught him. Cosimo reads to de Brugge through the bandit's cell window. Just before de Brugge is hanged, Cosimo tells de Brugge how the book they are reading ends. After de Brugge died, Cosimo began to seek out the Abbé Fauchelevent for lessons. However, Cosimo often taught his tutor, so he introduced him to ideas from the Enlightenment. This causes the abbé to be arrested because his ideas are seen as heretical. Cosimo isn't stopped by the arrest of the abbé, though. He starts writing to the smartest people of the time and buys the whole set of Diderot and D'Alembert's encyclopedia. In the summer, when it was hot and dry, people set fire to the woods. Cosimo works hard to start a fire department and shows that he is a skilled and charismatic leader. On Cosimo's 18th birthday, Baron Arminio finds him, gives him his sword, and reminds him of his duties as Baron de Ronde. Cosimo also starts to notice that the Cavalier Avvocato is acting strangely around this time. He finds out in the end that his uncle is working with Turkish pirates to steal ships. When Cosimo finds the pirates hiding food in a cave, he leads the hungry charcoal burners in fighting the pirates so that the charcoal burners can eat the food. Cosimo, Ottimo Massimo, and the Cavalier Avvocato are all on the mast of a boat. When they come across a pirate ship, the Cavalier Avvocato mutters the name Zyra, and the pirates kill him. Cosimo later tells the story to try to make Baron Arminio feel better about his uncle's death, but Baron Arminio soon dies of depression. Cosimo is now the Baron de Ronde, but not much else about his life has changed. Cosimo goes to Olivabassa, a nearby city, to meet a group of Spaniards who live in the trees there. Father Sulpicio, a Jesuit, introduces Cosimo to Federico Alonso Sanchez, the leader of the nobles, and to a man named El Conde. These nobles were sent away by King Carlos III, and now they are waiting for an invitation to come back. Soon, Cosimo falls in love with Ursula, who is Don Federico's daughter. He also shares ideas from the Enlightenment with his new friends. El Conde is very interested in these ideas, which makes Father Sulpicio say that he is starting a new branch of the Inquisition. Soon after this, Don Federico asks Cosimo to go back to Granada with him and marry Ursula. However, when the Spaniards get word that they can go home, Cosimo goes back to Umbrosa. Back at home, Cosimo dates a lot of women. Biagio has a hard time remembering what happened during this time because he was traveling in Europe and didn't come home until the Generalessa's health got worse. Not long after the Generalessa dies, Ottimo Massimo takes off across a meadow owned by Duke Tolomeo that Cosimo cannot cross. A few days later, a pretty woman on a horse rides into the meadow. It's Viola, the wife of Duke Tolomeo. She agrees to meet Cosimo, even though she seems both angry and kind, and their relationship as adults starts. Biagio says that this is the best part of Cosimo's life. Cosimo and Viola have different ideas about how to love. Viola wants her lovers to get all tangled up and prove themselves, while Cosimo wants to think about love logically. After these fights, Viola often goes away for weeks. Once, when Biagio was in Paris, a friend told him that Viola has other lovers all over Europe. This is told to Cosimo by Biagio, but Cosimo doesn't believe it. Not long after that, though, Viola starts going out with the Englishman Sir Osbert and the Neapolitan Don Salvatore. She tries to get the men to take turns with her, but neither they nor Cosimo want to. At the end of the play, Viola breaks up with all three men and goes to England with Ottimo Massimo. Cosimo starts to act crazy and says he's a bird. He sets up a printing press in the trees and puts out pamphlets that are mean to people. Things don't start to get better until wolves start to attack Ambrosa and Cosimo leads the fight to stop them. Biagio is not sure of the exact dates, but Cosimo becomes a Freemason sometime around this time. It's a good fit for him, since he knows other Enlightenment thinkers in Europe and lives in the trees. But he leaves the group in the end, because living in the trees makes him not want to build things with bricks. Cosimo isn't involved when the local Masonic lodge becomes a real lodge. He does, however, run into Father Sulpicio and two of his friends again. They are trying to get into the Freemasons. Father Sulpicio is stabbed in the stomach by Cosimo. Cosimo starts to help pick grapes when he is old enough and light enough to walk across the trellises. When the peasants start to feel bad about how much of the grape harvest they give to nobles, Cosimo tells them about the complaint book idea from the French Revolution, but this only makes them want to rebel. During the harvest, the peasants and Cosimo drive the collectors away and have a party. Soon, though, the young Count d'Estimac, who is in charge of the Austro-Sardinian army, arrives to put an end to the rebellion. Cosimo avoids being caught and spends the years of the French Revolution helping French soldiers, especially those led by Lieutenant Papillon. Shortly after the war ends, Cosimo joins the local council, but nobody reads his plan for a constitutional government or puts it into action. He thinks it's his duty to help the French, but he also helps the peasants in the area avoid Napoleon's cruel tactics. Napoleon does visit Cosimo, but not long after, Cosimo meets Russian soldiers who are trying to get Napoleon out of their country. Cosimo gets sick, but won't leave the trees. When an out-of-control hot air balloon comes by, he grabs onto it and falls into the sea, killing himself. Biagio doesn't know what will happen next. The 19th century isn't going well, and the Enlightenment's ideas are dead. He tries to read the newspaper, but it doesn't make sense without Cosimo. Also, Cosimo's home trees are gone, and now the only trees left are exotic ones. He wonders if Ambrosa only exists because Cosimo lives there.
About the author. Calvino was born in Italy in 1923. His parents were botanists and farmers. His father lived in Mexico for a while before moving to Cuba, and his mother gave him the name Calvino to remind him of his Italian roots. However, when Calvino was 2 years old, his family moved back to Europe. His parents made fun of both the National Fascist Party, which was in power, and religion, so Calvino didn't have to take religious classes at school. During World War II, Calvino hid his love of literature by going to the University of Turin and then the University of Florence to study agriculture. Instead of joining the army, he went into hiding. In 1944, he decided that the communists had the best argument, so he joined the communist Italian resistance. After the war, Calvino went back to Turin, where he finished his master's thesis on Joseph Conrad and got involved with communist groups and publications. In the late 1940s, he started publishing novels and short stories, which got him a lot of praise. However, his realist novels were not well received. After that, he started writing fantasy books, all of which did very well. After the Soviet Union invaded Hungary in 1957, Calvino left the Italian Communist Party. He still believed in communism as an idea, but he never joined another party. After this, Calvino spent only 3 months writing The Baron in the Trees, which went on to become one of his most famous works. He died in 1985 from bleeding in the brain.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.